What's going on, y'all? Let's talk about figuring out what to do with your life. I spent most of my adult life in pursuit of being an actor, a professional stage performer, which I succeeded at least the part of becoming a professional, getting paid to be on stage, joining the various unions associated with that, AGMA, Actors Equity. Did it at a high level, principal roles at Washington National Opera, at the Kennedy Center, some other opera houses, Arena Stage shortly thereafter. Those are the ones I hang my hat on, at least. Not the least of which because they were most recent prior to the Rona. But I always had these, not fantasies, certainly that was part of it, but callings to do business, be a business man, an executive. From a very early age, but also all during my time training for the stage and also being on stage. Sure, a lot of this was amplified by frustrations that I was having that I thought came from the stage world, but really it was frustrations internally, stuff that I hadn't addressed. But the more that I explore who I am, what I want, which is a continual journey, I don't think that no matter how much mastery you have in that area, you ever really figure it out fully. It's a continual journey. I think if you figure it out fully, you get called back to wherever it is that we came from. Still figuring that one out too. But as I continue down that path, I come back to the truths, or the truth, which seems to be the stuff that you feel called to earliest in your life, is a very good indication of what you should be doing with your time, with your energy when you grow up. Or rather, when your body, when this organism ages and then it peaks and then it starts to decay. Inevitable. But I refuse to grow up. And the stuff that I felt most interested and fascinated in when I was a wee lad was a combination of things. It was a bunch of different things. It was the businessman. I would print off flyers and say, would you like to join my business, and tack them up around my neighborhood? But I was also really into editing movies and making beats. I spent all of my free time when I was a kid doing that. But I would also, this was in the days before screens, spend a ton of time outside playing. I loved airsoft. Some of my favorite memories were getting into a wife beater because I had terrible body image then. And this was before I had gotten the gyno surgery, but I had wicked gyno. So always a wife beater because I was just thin enough after unfatting myself that I felt okay in that. And I built enough muscle that I was like, ooh, I look all right. Kind of like 50 Cent, who I'd been into for a few years at that point. But it would tamp down the gyno. Get the airsoft guns go in the backyard, bang, 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 running ops, you know. But then I also would see a movie or a TV show and then become that character. This is when I was really little, for days at a time. According to my mother, I walked around being like, I am Darth Vader. You will address me as Darth Vader. And I think at some holiday, somebody had left the TV on and the Terminator was on there. So there was a period of time, hadn't realized this until just now, that Arnold, you know, Arnold and I have been connected for many years since I was a child. You know, I was like, I'm the Terminator. Although I don't think I was doing the Arnold voice proficiently back then, if I was doing it at all. And so, what do you actually do with your life? Another thing that I was extraordinarily drawn to and that I was doing instinctively was fighting back. This got me in a lot of trouble in first grade. I'll spare the whole story, but a very clear memory that I have was being a first grader in Montessori school, and my teacher, Kathy Nelson, was bullying the absolute shit out of the only friend that I had in the class, because I was an outcast, Jamie. Jamie dropped a vial of something science related, because this is Montessori school, and at any given time, there were kids off in the corner reading obsessively. That was me. Or writing little plays, me. And then forcing everybody to watch them. Or doing some math. That was sometimes me. A little bit. Or some science experiments. Everybody could do whatever they wanted. Jamie dropped this vial, and it shattered and it made a mess. Now, mind you, we're in first grade. And she shamed the shit out of him. I don't remember the specifics, but I remember him running off to the bathroom and crying. And nobody went after him. And I was like, I'm going after him. And she was like, if you do that, you're going to be in big trouble. And I remember more or less standing up and telling her to get fucked. And I went after him. This is certainly part of the reason why I was viciously emotionally abused for the 2 years that I was at DCS Montessori in first and second grade by the administration, the vice principals, and the principal. But from an early age, I liked fighting back bullies, fighting back against bullies. So what struck me this morning that compelled me to get on here and share what I realized was not that, or not just that, the stuff that is most fascinating and interesting to you when you are a little kid is a very good indication, not just of the direction that you ought to be focusing on in your adult, I almost said grown up, in your adult life, but that I was curious to be an actor because I couldn't figure out what it was that I wanted to be, because you could be at any given time somebody who was running ops, standing up against bullies, or being the Terminator, or even being Darth Vader. That's not a very good one, even though my James Earl Jones is okay. Because being an actor, if you want to do a whole bunch of things and you can never really nail down one thing, sometimes I want to be a writer. Sometimes I want to be a this or that. Being an actor allows you to be all of these things on any given day, and for a short period of time without a ton of commitment. And then the craft of being an actor and a stage performer satisfies a bunch of other things that I was really drawn to, either by nature or by nurture, that I really liked. Fanatical discipline, not taking it too seriously and finding a lot of joy in the process, high standard of excellence and execution, stuff that I didn't have and that I always wanted to push myself to have, and that then once I have, I'm like, oh, I love this. I want to double down on this. But I'm not even a working actor right now. So what does that mean? Still can't figure out what it is that I want to do. Still can't figure out what it is that I want to be. I'm moving forward towards that. Like I mentioned, it's a continual, never-ending process. that is one of the ways that you keep, well, at least I keep, from getting bored. Basically, I'm never bored. Sometimes I'm bored in the macro sense, but that is tied to when I am disconnected from the stuff that reminds me who I am. So the thought that I had that struck me so hard was, well, I still can't figure out what it is that I want to do. So what am I actually doing? I'm helping people be heard. And I'm helping people find power and find conviction to use their voice, literally and figuratively, to fight back against bullies, to become strong enough to stand on their own, to become courageous enough to do so. And even if they're not fighting back against bullies, to become courageous enough to share and to create what they feel called to create. And that's pretty satisfying. And I don't think that I ever thought of doing that when I was a kid, but I was always doing that. I was super fortunate that for some reason I came out of the womb that way. My first inclination when doing a group project, I remember it was in first grade. No, this was second grade. Was, hey, why don't, instead of doing this in a PowerPoint or whatever it is that we're doing, instead of writing a book report on it, why don't we get a cast of people together and we'll go to my dad's studio and we'll make a audio track of this. We'll have some music and we'll have different voices and we'll have a script. Because I'd been gifted an Abbott and Costello CD at that time, and there was a lot more on it than just Who's on First. So I was like, oh, you can have these little audio worlds of basically movies, but without pictures. That's really cool. But along the way, while my organism was maturing, growing up, a lot of that gets stripped away. A lot of that gets stripped away, or it gets warped. It gets poisoned. It gets infected. It gets reactive instead of proactive. It gets selfish instead of magnanimous. So I still can't figure out what it is that I want to do. I want to do everything. I still watch movies and I'm like, I want to do that part. I want to do that part. See a TV show, I'm like, I want to do that. I want to be running ops. I want to be in Game of Thrones. I want to be on The Sopranos. But it's helping people be heard. Because if you have something to say, it's a moral duty for you to say it. Say they're being, again, literal or figurative. You have to let out what you're being called to create, or it's going to destroy you. Because creation is an invitation to connect. And the world is not as it is, but it's as you are. So if you think that the world is a lonely and cold place, you might be in a lonely and cold state. If the world seems like a place where nothing is possible and nothing good is happening to you, it doesn't mean that you are worthless or powerless. It just means that you haven't been reminded, or you haven't been reminding yourself of who you are and what's possible. So to be very reductive, I like taking all of my power and putting it into a person to help them speed up that timeline between feeling lonely and powerless and remembering who they are. For the right person, I think I like to imagine that I'm like a shot of nitrous oxide, like in Fast and Furious. Like, oh shit. Because there are people that have done that for me. There are people that do that for me. So I can't figure out what I want to be. I'll just be that. Feels good. And it creates a broad enough umbrella for me to still, I keep on coming back to running ops. It's the one that got away career wise because I didn't know that you were supposed to lie to the Marine Corps officer candidate recruiter. Well, have you ever smoked any weed? I was like, I mean, yeah, I'm from Colorado. I used to be the president of a fraternity where, I mean, he said, how many times? I was like, oh, I should start lying here. 300 or 400. He was like, dude, I wouldn't even put you in enlisted. It's all meant to be, but oh, did I want that? Oh, did I want to be running ops and being in a highly disciplined environment? In hindsight, it all makes sense, though. So I think that's what you are supposed to do with your life. You're supposed to take what is inside of you, put it outside of you. And if you can't figure out exactly what it is that you want to do, just focus on how you can most powerfully help other people in a way that fills your cup up. That's not costly to your soul. This belief, of course, is subject to change, but it's been more constant, or it's been a constant amidst other things that are changing. I think it's a stable pillar. What that may look like, how that may manifest into your world might be different, but if that's the core driver, core pillar. Makes a lot of sense, at least to me, right now. Anyway, time to go remind myself who I am. It's Saturday, which means running Prospect Park.